Hi guys, thanks for tuning in. I'm Janine Newberry and today my guest is Peter Wall. He is one of the co-founders of Hubud, which is a co-working workspace out here in Bali in Ubud. So Peter, can you tell me what inspired you to take the leap to come out here and set this place up?
It's a good question. And you used the word leap, and I would say it was more like a safe first step because I was living in Canada at the time. We decided to move here. I had worked as a journalist for 10 years in Canada, and I came on a one-year sabbatical to Hubud. Many people who do take the leap are a little more, I don't know if brave is the right word, but they really kind of it was like jumping off a cliff. But for me, it was kind of like a nice, easy first step, and then after a year, we decided to stay.
What was it that made you decide to stay?
I think we stayed because it's a big world, and we had been living for 10 years in Toronto, and I had a great life in Toronto, and I had a pretty good job. I wasn't miserable with my job, but we came here and we met people from around the world, and our kids were going to this school called Green School, and we kind of settled into this different type of life, and we thought, okay, we could go back to our previous life, which was the same, would have been the same, or we could kind of continue the adventure and do another year. And then another year became, and now it's been almost 5 years that we've been here. But yeah, I think it's just because, why not? There's lots to see in the world.
Yeah. Would it be true to say that you just wanted more from life, or?
Well, I saw someone give a presentation the other day, and they said basically you have, in the olden days, you would have you'd go to university, get a job, and be in that career for 40 years, and then you'd retire. And I think nowadays, people are having many different lives, and her kind of hypothesis was that you have 11 lives during your life. So there's you can basically divide your life up into sort of 10-year periods. So after.
So you're going to live to 110? Yeah, we're all going to live to 110. That's good.
Yeah,
I like that. I like that.
You're right. Maybe it was 8, but she had sort of things divided by or maybe she said 7 lives. But I like that idea. I like that idea of kind of reinventing yourself. And certainly amongst our members here at Hubud, at our co-working space, people are constantly reinventing themselves. Someone walks in and they're like, "Hi, I'm Debbie. I'm a banker from Boston, and now I'm doing e-commerce, or now I'm a yoga teacher, or now I'm a yoga teacher who does e-commerce." So I think that's the world is becoming more entrepreneurial. I think, and this is kind of honestly, I think the kind of members that we have are a little bit ahead of the wave in terms of, more mobile, more worldly, more entrepreneurial, less corporate, and I think that's kind of a trend in the world.
Yeah, definitely. What about the people at home that are watching this and they're thinking of starting something, but they're not quite sure what? Would this be a good space for them to come and work that out?
Well, that's a pretty soft question.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I think that spaces like this, whether it's here in Bali or other co-working spaces in the world, are great places to meet people who are doing interesting things, and they're by their very nature, they're collaborative spaces where people can support each other and connect with each other and find future business partners and find collaborators. So I'm a big fan of the co-working, idea, the co-working movement.
Could you explain what co-working is for the people at home that are not quite sure what that is?
Yeah, no, it's a good question because it's kind of the air we breathe here, and so we assume that
everybody knows.
Yeah, everyone knows what co-working is, and everyone knows what Odesk is and Elance, and a lot of the things that are kind of like air for us almost in this space. Mm-hmm. But co-working is essentially, the idea's been around for about 10 or 15 years, and really has taken off in the last few. And it's essentially a shared space, kind of like, for people who aren't familiar with it, I often say it's kind of like a shared office where you share facilities, but there's a real emphasis on collaboration and connection and events. So we have about 300 members here in our space. We've been open for coming up on 2 years, and our members are from over 60. We've had members from over 60 countries in the last 2 years. So really from all over the world, very international. And most of them are working on some type of business that they can run from anywhere. There's not that many people that have bricks and mortars businesses that are running them here.
That's amazing. One of the things I've noticed here is that if you want to set up a new business, everybody here seems to have different skill sets. So anything that you want to do within the context of setting up a business, there's generally someone here that can help you do that. So that's fantastic, because I think sometimes people might worry if they come somewhere like Bali, it's kind of so off the grain of it's not central London, it's not America, that you might not have the facilities. But actually I'd say that it's got everything that you need here. And I really like a turn point that you're setting up, which is so people are coming out and they want to learn new skill sets, you can actually facilitate that. So do you want to explain what turn point is and what you can do there?
Sure. So we've been, like I said, open at Hubud for about 2 years, and one of the things we've noticed is that a lot of people that have come through our space are in some type of transition, or in some type of turning point where they've been doing something for a while and they want to try doing something new. So we've set up this company called Turnpoint, and the idea is it's an education company that will give people the skills and confidence to become location-independent entrepreneurs, or even just become entrepreneurs. You can go take what you've learned and take it back to if you don't want to move halfway across the world, you take it back to where you're living. Though we do have a lot of people who are digital nomads here, which is, I think a lot of people who will take the courses are aspiring digital nomads. But what we've noticed is that in order to become an entrepreneur, there's a certain set of skills that are really handy to have. And so we're trying to line up a series of courses that people can take that will teach them some of the skills that you need to be entrepreneurial and to leave kind of conventional work behind.
Who inspires you? Who are the people that inspire you, make you want to get out of bed in the morning and do what you do?
Oh, it's a good question. I think, in the context of Hubud and the context of co-working and location-independent entrepreneurship, certainly Tim Ferriss is a name that comes up a lot. He wrote the book called The 4-Hour Workweek, which has now been translated into however many languages, and he's a real inspirational figure within this space and this world. I'm not sure I agree with everything that he says, but he's continuing to evolve and innovate, and he's an interesting guy. Do you
think it's possible to work only 4 hours a week?
I think if you're Tim Ferriss, it might be. If you're super organized, my feeling about work is that I don't necessarily see work as a bad thing, and I think that Tim Ferriss, one of his sort of points in his book is that work is something you want to avoid doing because you want to do stuff that you really enjoy the rest of the time. And I'm not sure I agree with that kind of take on work. I enjoy working. I enjoy, connecting to people while I'm working and collaborating with people. And so I don't see work and life so separate. I see them much more together.
I think that's the difference between a conventional job of working and choosing to do something that you love because it doesn't feel like work. I think that's the difference.
Yeah, I think someone once said, if you want to find a career that you really love, find something that you're passionate about and follow it. Tim Ferriss would probably disagree. He would say, don't turn your passions into work. So I think there's a whole bunch of different ways to look at it. But I do think he's a pretty inspirational person.
We have a question from the audience. Loretta wanted to know, what was the last book that you read and what did you like about it?
I read a book recently called The Power of Habit, which I found really useful because it kind of talked about creating habits and how they can be, particularly in an environment like this, how they can be really beneficial to getting things done and to moving forward as a person and as an entrepreneur. In this kind of context, we see a lot of people who have left conventional work and they're running their own business in a space like this, and yet a lot of people still work in the space on Saturday and Sunday is very quiet, even though we're open 24 hours. And at night it's very quiet.
Got the 9 to 5s ingrained into us.
Yeah, I mean, routine is powerful, and habits are really powerful. And I think some habits obviously are not beneficial, and and some habits can be really beneficial. So they talk in the book about how you can use creating habits to your advantage.
Yeah. What habits have you created within your business that have benefited and helped it propel and move forward?
Well, I think I would say two things. I would say one, just regular things that we do, like team meetings and regular check-ins. We do staff evaluations every 6 months, and I worked at a large corporation, the CBC, which is the kind of Canadian version of the BBC, and I actually was never formally evaluated over my entire 10-year career there, which is remarkable to me. So I think creating structures like that is super important. And then the other thing that I've been really happy about, what we've been able to create here is a certain culture around collaboration and connection. So I feel like our staff, even the new staff that come in, very quickly pick that up. That it's if you're talking to a member, or you're talking to a community member, that's valuable, and there's value in that. You're not wasting your time. You're not being distracted. So I think consequently our staff are very approachable and very friendly, and on our events have a kind of an approachability to them, which I think is really important.
Yeah, I've got to say I've been here for about a month now, hanging out, working from this space, and it feels like it's a real family feel, and it's really nice. And the people that work here seem to really love it. So I think what you're creating here is pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things, one of the challenges in a place like Ubud is that there's a lot of people that come and go,
It's very transient.
It's very transient. And so within that transient culture, how do you create a culture that is continuous, is continuous and is, it's not constantly, the culture is not constantly changing itself. And so I think before we opened up, we thought a lot about how we were going to do that. And I think the most important thing, getting back to habits, is we've created events that happen every week, no matter what, and those are like, skill sharing events, lectures, brainstorming events. And those, I think, really help to reinforce the culture that you're trying to create.
So when people are setting up businesses, they come across challenges. So what have been some of your biggest challenges, and how have you overcome them?
Well, I think there's two types of challenges. One, I think there's the challenges that you face on a daily basis. Like today, we had our membership management system crash, and that's, those are like practical, physical, technological, financial challenges. And I think you just deal with those as they come up. The most important type of challenges I think to face are, your mental, your psychological challenges. And I think being here in a space like Hubud, in a place like Bali, the cost of failure is very low. So if we fail, like when we first opened up, I think it was a big question mark as to whether we would be a space that people would come to, whether people would sign up and be members, because it was a new idea. No one had done co-working in Bali before. So the biggest challenge for us was actually convincing ourselves that we could do it. And I think
What's that saying? In order to do anything, you have to believe that you're already doing it.
Right. Yeah, I think that's totally true. And so I think that's the one thing, that big learning that I've had in the last, this project's been about 2.5 years, is that, and it kind of sounds cliched, but if you really put your mind to something, you can do it.
Yeah.
And it's fun to do it in somewhere like Bali. Like I said, the cost of, we're not going to go bankrupt if this place kind of goes out of business, or if it had gone out of business. And certainly, my reputation here is not as deep as my reputation would have been, prior to coming here, because my family and friends and stuff weren't living here when we started our business.
You were starting afresh, completely afresh.
Yeah, exactly. And now that we've been here for a while, now we have our own reputations here, and my reputation here is probably much better than my reputation.
What is your reputation here? It's good. It's got a very good reputation. Just teasing. What would you have done differently, knowing what you know now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good question again. I think we would have, focused. We were really big into the community side of the business, and really into building the community and the events and all of that, and I think it's super important. But I also think that, it was really my first entrepreneurial project, this business, and so I would have probably tried to get, if I had to go back and do it again, I would probably have tried to set up some systems that were better.
Yeah.
For instance, such as our membership management system just crashed, right? Okay. Today, or as we're having problems with it, we probably should have bought the better one, 2 years ago, and not cheaped out on the cheap one, which we've been kind of patching together for the last 2 years, and now we really have to get rid of it. So that's one thing, and then the other thing, I think I would have focused a little bit more on, long-term financial viability, because I think that's super important. That if you're going to run a business, you need to be able to look a year, 2 years, 5 years down the line, and say, okay, is this business financially sustainable? And if it's not, okay, how can I make it? And we didn't do enough of that in our first early years, which we probably should have.
So, what is next? What are you doing next?
What is next? That's a good question. We've been toying around with moving to a new space, because this space is, as you probably know firsthand, is really crowded.
I've heard rumours it's going to be at the Green School. Am I right in thinking that?
Green School has expressed interest in us doing a space there, but I don't think we would move the entire project there, just because it's more remote. I think it's important for us to be closer to where people live. closer to kind of the action in Hubud. So we're looking at, we've been looking very hard at a space, and it might happen in the next year. So that'll be fun if it does. We've also launched Turnpoint, and so we're working hard on planning more courses and getting people to come and take those courses, which is exciting. And then there's a mysterious Project C, which
I like mysterious Project C.
which I can't say much about, that I'm working on.
Can you give us a little bit, just a little bit?
I think, sure. I mean, the idea is to try to take some of the brain power that's here in the space already and turn it into another project. So we'll see how that goes.
Watch this space. So I asked you to come up with a thought-provoking question or comment for our viewers, so they've got something to take away. So would you like to share that?
Sure. So my thought-provoking question is, if you're not doing what you really want to do, why?
Good question.
And it kind of comes from this idea of, what's holding you back? And when I was a journalist for 10 years, I probably wasn't as entrepreneurial as I should have been within the organization that I was working for. And, it was only actually, after getting out of the organization and seeing that what I thought was important or a big deal within that organization was actually not. Was actually just the internal politics and machinations of that organization. So that's kind of what I would say is, if you're not happy, if you're not really doing what you love, why are you not? What's holding you back from doing it? And then the second question I would have people think about a little bit is what is it that you really want? Because, and that's a question we ask ourselves here all the time, and that's a lot of our members are asking themselves, like, if you're going to build an ideal lifestyle for yourself and an ideal job for yourself and an ideal business for yourself, what would it look like? And don't do just something, follow an opportunity just because it's there. Follow it because you really want to do it.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. Amazing questions. Thank you for the interview, and good luck with your Turnpoint project and everything in the future. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Janine. Good luck to
Thank
you
you.
as well.
And right now we have to end with some robot dancing.
Robot
dancing. Thank you.
All right, nice.